And happy So What Day. It is webcast day as well, and that means that at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be going live over on sewingonline.sulky.com with our freestanding tea light webcast with Sheila Ryan of Designs by Baby Moon. So the day has finally arrived. If you've already registered for today's webcast, you are ready to go. You will get an email right before we go live. You might have already gotten it, reminding you that today is the big day. And you'll find links to hop on over to our event page where we'll be going live with Sheila at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you haven't registered already for this afternoon's live stream with Sheila, you can still register up until we go live, really. So be sure to go on and register, because with your registration, you will get a free machine embroidery design from Sulky. It's a really cute little Easter design with a little bunny on it and some carrots, and you're going to love it. So be sure to register for that event, and you will get the entire tutorial for making these adorable in the hoop tea light covers. You can hang them like little lanterns and turn on your battery operated tea light. You can use them as a centerpiece for your Easter or spring table. You can even use them as little ornaments if you do like an Easter tree or a bunting on your fireplace or something like that. So these are absolutely adorable. You'll also learn how to make these little bonus charms that Sheila is giving along with the Tea Light Design Collection. You can purchase that Tea Light Design Collection by itself, or with purchase of the kit, you will also get all the design files and the bonus charms. So this is what that kit looks like. You'll get these sheets of Sulky Felty in the great spring colors that you'll want for your tea lights. And what's really cool about the Felty is not only is it designed to take a lot of needle penetrations and accept a lot of thread without that buckling and puckering that you can sometimes experience with other kinds of felt and craft felt, but it's also really great for these lanterns because the light within kind of flickers and glows, and the Felty is just perfect for this project. So you'll get 6 sheets of Sulky Felty in these great spring colors. You also get 4 king spools of Sulky Poly Deco thread, and these thread colors coordinate with all the designs in Sheila's collection that she's curated for this kit and this event today. And you'll also get a pack of organ needles so that you can install a fresh needle for your project and swap out needles as you create more stitch outs. You'll also get a pack of Ultra Solvy. This is a 3-yard pack, so you'll be able to stitch out lots of lanterns and lots of charms. And for the charms, you can create earrings out of them. You can create little smaller ornaments out of them, little gifty tags, things like that. So really, really cute projects as we head into spring and as Easter approaches as well, if you celebrate Easter. So be sure to grab up your kit, because the special kit pricing, today's the last day to grab up the special kit pricing, and then the kit jumps up to retail price. So you'll want to be sure to grab up that kit, first of all, while supplies last, and secondly, while the sale lasts as well. So I hope you will be joining us at 2 p.m. over at sewingonline.sulky.com. If you haven't registered yet, I linked to the registration page directly in the description of today's post, so you can head right to that registration page and make sure that it's added to your personal library over on our education site. And if you haven't experienced that site before, it is different from sulky.com. Sulky.com is where you'll buy your kit, where you grab up all of your great Sulky products. And then sewingonline.sulky.com is where we host all of our education, live webinars, live video casts, our longer format sewing sessions, and all kinds of events. So you'll need a login for both sites in order to get the very best of what Sulky has to offer. All right, so I hope you'll be joining in a couple of short hours here, and you'll get to meet Sheila Ryan of Designs by Baby Moon. She is so fantastic, a wonderful teacher. I think you'll just really enjoy learning more about her if you aren't familiar with her designs already, and getting this free class today, this afternoon. So lots of you saying hello. Hi, Dawn. Dawn's ready for the webinar, has her kit ready. Fantastic. Be sure that you are commenting, leaving your questions in the comments in the live chat, giving me those great little emoji symbols, because if you do, you will be eligible to win today's gift for So What? And that is our Bunny Hop Machine Embroidery Palette. The palette includes all kinds of great designs that I'm going to be showing you today on our table runner project. And it also includes 10 spools of Sulky rayon thread. Those are the colors that are featured in the design collection that I'm going to be showing you today. So one lucky viewer who is watching live now, commenting, sharing out the post, make sure to like our page and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will be automatically eligible to win today's gift. All right, and it has a $47.99 value, so a really great gift today. I think it deserves a round of applause. All right, so let's get to today's project, which is our Bunny Hop Table Runner. So speaking of all things Easter and springtime, the Bunny Hop Table Runner was designed by Guidry of Cherry Blossoms Quilting. And you can check out her website as well for lots of quilting tutorials. You know, we are in the throes of National Quilting Month, so we're kind of combining machine embroidery techniques with a quilty project for you today. And this looks rather simple as far as the piecing goes. And we're going to piece in these embroidered panels into the table runner, which gives it some really great personality and textural interest as well. These designs are part of that Bunny Hop machine embroidery collection. All those designs are available individually for purchase at sulky.com. There are 6 designs in 2 sizes, plus 2 bonus designs, because we really couldn't decide on some of the lettering designs. So some have just flowers, some have Easter eggs and flowers. So lots of great value if you grab up the machine embroidery collection as a whole, or if you like one particular design or a couple, you can just grab those individually, or you can grab up the machine embroidery palette, which includes all 6 designs in all sizes, as well as those 10 spools of Sulky rayon thread. It's so great when you don't have to go sifting through all of your thread boxes and thread stands to find just the right thread color, only to find out that you don't have it on hand. So our palettes are really great because all you have to do is consult your color sequence chart to know which color goes where. Open up your palette and you can start stitching. All right, so Bunny Hop Table Runner, this is a free pattern at sulky.com. So all you have to do is add it to your cart at sulky.com, go through the checkout process. It'll say $0, and then just finish your transaction and your pattern will go into your sulky.com account. Then you can grab it, download it, print it, or just view it on your screen, and you'll have all the instructions you need for the table runner, the yardage you need to purchase, all of that good stuff. So speaking of the yardage, there are quite a few fabrics involved in this table runner, but you can see fabrics 1 through 4 are your main fabrics for the piecing and the background for the embroideries. You'll also need a plush fabric. That's what I meant by textural interest with this table runner, because Our bunny gent and our bunny gal that are featured on the table runner are plush in the hoop applique embroideries. So I'm going to go over the steps to create those using your machine embroidery design. It's a multi-step applique embroidery that's done in the hoop of your embroidery machine. And that plush fabric, when we use it for the bunny face and ears, it just takes on a whole new dimension. You could also use the sulky felty for those portions of the design. They wouldn't be as plush, but just as cute. And there's also an inner portion of the bunny ears that I'll show you. You can use one of these applique scraps for that portion, or you could use a different color of sulky felty so that you have kind of an inner fuzzy ear, and then your outer fur would be maybe out of a minky or even a low pile faux fur fabric. And we're going to be able to embroider the details of the bunny faces over the top of that plush fabric with the help of sulky solvy. So we will get to all of the materials that you need are in that digital pattern. So when you grab up that pattern, you'll find your supply list for everything you need to gather. We feature a lot of stabilizers in this particular project. There's sulky tear easy, sulky soft and sheer, and of course that sulky solvy. So you need a few different stabilizers in order to embroider these designs successfully on this lighter weight quilting cotton fabric. We need to add some thread count to that fabric so that it can accept a lot of stitching and a lot of needle penetrations without shredding or puckering. Okay, so we're going to grab up those stabilizers. We also, of course, need our thread. So as I mentioned, our embroidery designs feature 10 spools of sulky rayon thread. You might choose to showcase a different design, but in my ever to be humble opinion, these are just perfect as they were made for this particular table runner. And of course, they have that plushy texture to them. Also, we need some bobbin thread. You can use sulky 60 weight bobbin thread or sulky 60 weight poly light thread for your bobbin thread for the embroidery designs. We also need some construction thread. For construction, we're going to be using 50 weight cotton thread. 50 weight is a little bit lighter than that 40 weight rayon that we use for machine embroidery. And it makes for really great piecing seams where you don't have that sort of telltale bump of thread on all of your seams. So it makes it nice and flat and easy to quilt, whether you're going to just straight line quilt or free motion quilt, or you could even long arm this project. But I'm going to give you a lot of different, Cherry really showcased a lot of different quilting techniques and quilting threads, and you can pick and choose what's right for you, or you can use all of them like Cherry did for our sample here today. Let's see, what else do we need? We're going to need some sulky KK2000. That's going to help in our embroidery hooping process, as well as layering our table runner quilt layers. So once the front is pieced, and then we need our batting and backing, we're going to use that KK2000 as our temporary basting spray. Love using it for that. Makes it so easy. We don't have to baste or pin the quilt, especially on a smaller scale quilty project like this. All right, so there's probably a few more supplies that are going to come in handy, and I'll get to those as we work our way through the project today. So here is what that, let's see. I showed you the fabrics already, and as I mentioned, there's our 4 main fabrics, our plush fabric, and then we have a slew of applique scraps, because as I mentioned, this bunny hop machine embroidery collection, they are in the hoop applique embroideries. So even our lettering designs, some of the little Easter eggs in the background of those lettering, of those letters, have fabric added to them for just added interest. And I just love in the hoop appliques. They're so much easier to do because your machine's doing all the work for you. So you need to gather some of your favorite fabric scraps. They can coordinate or contrast because, you know, Easter eggs take all different colors and embellishments, so you can really have fun with it and dive into your scrap bin for the applique portions of this design. So first off, we're going to work on the embroidered panels, and then once those are complete, we can do the piecing for the rest of the table runner. So first things first, I'm going to work with our bunny gal design, and you would follow suit with these instructions to embroider the bunny gent as well. So you will cut your fabric rectangle for that portion of the table runner, and we're going to apply a rectangle of soft and sheer extra to the wrong side of the fabric. And this is what I mean about adding thread count to the fabric. We're using a fusible cutaway stabilizer for this. It's almost like adding a layer of interfacing to this particular fabric, but it's really a layer of stabilizer that's going to remain with the table runner throughout its life. And it's also going to help that embroidery, look pretty for, its life. So it adds to the longevity of the project as well. There won't be any sagging or anything around that embroidery, year over year as you grab up your spring table runner to put out. This bunny has a pretty high stitch count just for the satin stitch appliques around that plush fabric. Not to mention the plush fabric is adding a little bit of weight to our quilting cotton as well. So this layer of soft and sheer extra is really paramount in making sure that that fabric doesn't sag or shift or buckle or pucker while we're doing the embroidery. All right, then we're going to hoop 2 layers of Sulky Tear Easy stabilizer. And 2 layers are needed really to support these denser applique designs. So we're going to hoop just the stabilizer so that our bunny fabric panel doesn't get marred by the hooping process. Sometimes when you're hooping even a woven fabric that you might think is really stable, like a quilting cottons are actually rather lightweight. Sometimes they're even silky smooth, especially these higher quality, great quilting cotton fabrics. And what can happen if you hoop that fabric is the fabric weave can actually pull apart with your hooping process, especially if you hoop it a little bit too tight. So even with really great stabilization, even with the additional fusible soft and sheer stabilizer behind it, it can still separate the weave ever so slightly around that inner hoop ring. And that's how you get puckering with these types of fabrics that you might think are super stable, that can withstand hooping and all of that. So we're going to do hoopless embroidery instead with these fabrics, even though they are stabilized and we're adding 2 layers of Tear Easy to the backing. So we're going to hoop only the stabilizer within our hoop, and then we're going to mark our center cross marks right onto the stabilizer. You can use a hoop template if your machine came with a hoop template, or you can simply use the markings on your inner hoop ring and a ruler to mark that center cross mark on your stabilizer. So here it is shown using a hoop template to make those markings. Your hoop template will have little openings along those lines. Do you see those little openings? You can mark those with your fabric marker of choice, then remove your template and draw a straight line connecting those dots. All right, then we're going to prepare our fabric for the hoopless embroidery. So instead of marking on our fabric, we're actually going to use fold lines to mark our fabric up or align our fabric really with those lines we just placed onto the stabilizer. So you're going to fold your fabric in half one way and then fold your fabric in half the other way. And that stabilizer behind the fabric is going to create some nice crisp fold lines that we can then use to place onto our hooped stabilizer. So with it folded in half lengthwise or widthwise, you can align the first fold, use a little bit of KK2000, and then unfold it onto the stabilizer, fold back the opposite edge, use a little bit of KK, and then smooth it down nice and flat, making sure that your vertical and horizontal cross marks are matching up with the cross marks you put onto your stabilizer. And yes, Jennifer Alexander is saying you could just use a magnetic hoop like a dime monster hoop. That's a really great tip. And as you know, Jennifer, because I recognize your name, you know I love my magnetic hoops, and we now offer them at sulky.com. So you can go over to sulky.com, plug in your machine brand and model, and see if there's a magnetic hoop that's compatible with your embroidery machine. They are really game changers when it comes to embroidering things that cannot be hooped, or fabric that's too dense to be hooped, or items like collars or cuffs that you can't fit into a hoop. So for all of your hoopless embroidery needs, those magnetic hoops are amazing. If you're going to invest in anything for your sewing room this spring, I would say grab up some Sulky Slimline threads, boxes of thread kits to replenish your supply. If you're doing a little spring cleaning in your sewing room, you know, kind of organize your threads by color, see what threads you might be missing. And I also recommend investing in 1 or 2 magnetic hoops, the largest size that you can afford with your budget, because you will truly save so much time and energy and placement fussing with those magnetic hoops. And they're also great for quilting in the hoop as well. All right, yeah, you can quilt your entire, or you can hoop your entire table runner and quilt it in the hoop so easily with these magnetic hoops. Lots of people are saying, love my magnetic hoops. Sandy just got one, can't wait to use it. Well, this is a great opportunity for you to break it in. You will love it. All right, so let's see. This is our background fabric. I'm sorry, I don't know what this picture is, so we're gonna just go right past it. All right, back to hooping our fabric. I think that was just showing the KK2000 on deck, ready for you to place your fabric in the hoop. All right, so you can see our fold lines are still a little bit visible, and that's fine. Once you secure your fabric in the hoop using your KK2000, if you happen to have one of those mini irons, a little handheld iron, you can actually take this over to your ironing board and press out those folds while your fabric is in the hoop. And that will, you know, get rid of all of those fold lines for you, so you don't have to worry about it when your stitch out is completed. But if you don't have one of those, don't worry. Just smooth it as nice and flat as you can, and you can take care of those once your embroidery is complete. All right, then we're going to take our hoop over to the embroidery machine. And if you have the capabilities of stitching out a basting box, whether it is a baste in the hoop or baste inside the inner hoop or baste around the design function, either one of those will just further secure your fabric in that hoop. In the case of the quilting cotton, I would probably baste inside the hoop rather than basting the design perimeter, just so that the majority of your fabric is really secured along that hoop edge. But if you don't have that function, don't worry, you can just begin the stitch out and just make sure that you've used enough of that KK2000's temporary spray adhesive that your fabric is nice and secure to that stabilizer. All right, then you are going to perform the very first color stop for your design, which is the placement box, or excuse me, we just did the placement box, which is our placement stitches for our first applique fabric. So in the case of the bunny gent or the bunny gal, it will be that circular shape for the face. So you can see our placement stitches are stitched out. So now we know where to place that first little square of applique fabric. And you want to make sure that your applique fabric is cut larger than your circle so that those stitches, you don't want to cut it too close. But if you happen to have a cutting machine, you can import this design into your cutting machine, depending on the cutting machine brand that you have. And if you have software, you can create the correct file that you need in order to do that. And it will actually cut out that circle of fabric for you. I think it even works with these plush types of minky fabric as well. But at any rate, we're not doing that here. We want to make this a little bit more universal for people who don't have those fabrics. So here you can see that placement circle is stitched out along with that basting box as well. And now we're going to use a little bit more KK2000 and secure our plush fabric right over the top of our circle placement stitches. Once we have done that, you can return your hoop back to the machine, and we need to add a layer of sulky solvy stabilizer. This is very important when we are embroidering on plush fabrics because we don't want our stitches to sink into the nap of that fabric, and then sort of the little texture of the fabric kind of goes over that stitching, making it really hard to see the details. So instead of it sinking down into the nap, we want it to sit proudly on top of the nap. So before I add the sulky solvy, I like to kind of brush the plush fabric. I typically brush it downward because especially if you're wearing something or if your table runner is going to hang off the edge of something, you want that nap to kind of go downward. So we're going to kind of just brush it with our hand to make sure all the little loops or naps are going in the same direction. And then we're going to apply a little square of sulky solvy to the top of our plush fabric. And you can use some masking tape, even some washi tape, or some embroidery tape, or you can also spray the solvy with a little light spray of KK2000 and stick it over the top of your plush fabric. Then we will return our hoop back to the machine and stitch the tacking stitches step. This will be the next portion of your design, and your machine will stitch that same circle, tacking down the plush fabric to your base fabric. Once that is complete, we're going to remove the fabric beyond that circle stitching using some applique scissors. And we're also going to tear away that solvy. Now, solvy, yes, is water soluble. So you could also moisten a Q-tip or a cotton swab and run it along those stitches and just lift away your solvy. And actually, I think I'm speaking prematurely. Let me just go ahead and see if she has removed the solvy. It does look like it has been removed. However, you could leave it in place for the duration of the stitch out because we're actually going to add the facial features to our bunny. And we also want the solvy in place for that so that those elements are also seen very well on that plushy fabric surface. All right, I should also mention, have a lint roller close by when you're trimming away your applique fabric because some of these more plushy fabrics like to shed. And when you're trimming away that applique edging, you can get some fraying little bits, and we don't want that to get into our machine anywhere or get stuck in any of the stitching. So after you've trimmed that away, just give it a little brush with your lint roller going in that same downward direction. And then you can return your hoop back to the machine and embroider the satin stitch edging. And you can see some of the edges are not satin stitched quite yet because we're going to add those satin stitches when we add the portions of the ears. So now you can see, oh, someone is saying that they can't hear me. Can everyone hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm seeing no thumbs up. All right, I'm going to power through and hopefully everybody can hear me. All right, so with these portions of the applique, now we are going to add our applique ears. So you can see this is a multi-step applique process. Now I'm seeing all the thumbs up. All right, thanks everybody. Oops. All right. So now you can see our ears have been added in the same multi-step way, where we first have our placement stitch for the applique fabric, then we place the applique fabric and do the tacking stitches, then we trim away the outside edges beyond the applique, and then we complete with our satin stitch edging. So now we have some placement stitches showing for the inner ear. This is where you can use another color of plush fabric or a lighter weight plush fabric like the sulky felty could be on the inside of the ears so that they still have some nice texture but aren't as furry as the rest of the bunny. Or you could use a colorful print for the inner ear appliques. And then you follow suit by adding your little bow. This is the bunny gal, so she has a cute little applique bow. The bunny gent has a little bow tie, and that is a multi-step applique in the hoop as well. So after the ears, you will do either the bow or the bow tie, and then you'll add those facial features of the bunny. And then at that point, you can remove your solvi so that you're ready to move forward with the rest of the table runner construction. So once you have your two bunnies embroidered, you'll want to trim them up according to the block dimensions of the pattern. And there's our bunny gent with his cute little bow tie. And then we're going to start preparing the embroidered embroidered blocks. This is the Hoppy Easter egg design. There's also another version of that design that just has flowers around it. And then the Some Bunny Loves You design. And I'm going to enlarge this picture so you can see all the applique elements. These have appliques inside of the little Easter eggs as well as inside of those flowers. And then the little hearts in Loves You are also in the hoop appliques. So this is where you can really have fun with your scrap bin. Bring in lots of colors. You know, spring is all about flowers being in bloom and lots of bright colors. And you can coordinate all of these. Or like I said, choose some really outlandish contrasting fabrics that maybe you haven't found a use for. And they will all look great with all of the thread work on top that ties them all together. So after you have embroidered these, now these get embroidered in the same hoopless embroidery method, but we don't have any plush fabric within these designs. These are just quilting cottons that are added in the applique method, so you don't need the additional solvi with these two designs. And yes, Esther, there is also embroidery detailing on top of those eggs. So the flowers and the dots and the hearts that you see are all thread. They're not part of the fabric design. And the same thing with the flowers. The little dots inside of the flowers are done in thread. So even choosing a solid fabric for these and letting that thread work really shine and be the detailing is great. Or you can use a minimal print fabric so that you can really see all of those cute little elements and motifs within those designs. All right, whoops, if I can get this going here in the right size, bear with me a moment. So once we have these embroidered as well, these are going to be the panels on either end of the table runner. So we'll want to do the same thing, press if you need to just around the embroidery from the wrong side. I generally just steer clear of all of my embroidery with the iron. So just press to remove any hoop markings or any, areas that you need to that got marred by the hooping process. And then we're going to square up those rectangles so that they're ready to go when we construct the table runner. So now you have all of your machine embroidery complete. You can kind of set those blocks aside, and we're going to start assembling the rest of the table runner, which is just really a series of long rectangles that we're going to sew together and then cut apart so that we have all of our blocks sewn and assembled for the table runner background, really, or table runner top, we'll say. All right, so here are all of our embroideries all squared up and ready to go. Now we are going to go ahead and assemble one of our strip sets. There are a couple of different strip sets that make up the table runner. So you will find all the dimensions, everything you need to cut and sew within that digital pattern that I mentioned that's available at sulky.com, and it's absolutely for free. So first off, we are going to stitch these strips together and alternate the prints. All right, then we are going to cut them in such a way as to make quite a few 3-set strips. All right, then we are going to follow suit with the other 2 fabric colors, creating our C and D strip sets. And then we're going to create units 2, units 3, and finally units 4. So this is a great way to streamline the piecing process. Rather than having to deal with all of these small squares, we're starting out and dealing with larger rectangles. And it really just makes the process so much easier to manage and less intimidating as you're working your way through the table runner construction. And it ends up looking so impressive, like you've put all these small little squares together, and you have, just in a very streamlined way. Then we are going to create these particular block units, and you can see we're alternating those strip segments that we created with our very smart piecing techniques. So we have our Bunny Gent block unit and our Bunny Gal block unit. Then we're going to create the block units for the end of the table runner. So we've got a 5-piece block unit, and we are going to stitch that to our Hoppy Easter panel and our Some Bunny Loves You panel. All right, then this is the center unit. All right, so we've got our center unit, then our bunny blocks on either end, and then finally our very end wording units, I'll call them. And yes, look how perfect those look because of how they were pieced in that streamlined fashion. Leslie is saying, maybe I could do this. You can. All right, and Cherry makes it really easy to understand, how to break this down in larger components so it's not as intimidating. All right, then we're going to add those bunny block segments to either end of that center-pieced panel. And then, like I mentioned, add our end units. Everything's, sewn together with right sides together and then pressed to the right side. So you can either press your seams open or press them to one side, or what I like to do is kind of press them in the direction they want to go, because I want everything laying nice and flat. I don't want to force something, one seam to go one way and one to go another. Now, the exception to this would be if I'm working with a really lightweight fabric where I might see the shadow of the seam allowance behind it, then I will press it the opposite direction so that I don't have that show through of the seam allowance. When you are quilting something, it really is going to depend on how you're going to quilt it, but you might want all of your seam allowances going toward one end, right? Or maybe your seam allowances are going to either end, starting in the middle and going out, so that when you work your way across the quilt, nothing is, catching or looking off. All right. So now we get to layer our quilt top with our quilt batting with our backing fabric. And we will use our KK2000 to do that temporary quilt basting. KK2000 is an air-soluble product, so it actually dissipates into the air after about 48 to 72 hours. So it's really amazing. It doesn't gum up your needle. You can use 2 layers of it. You can actually put it on your quilt, on the backing of your quilt top, as well as on your, I can't speak, as well as on your batting. And then when you put the 2 together, you have a nice bond. I always kind of start at the center with spraying. So I'll fold my table runner in half, start at the center, work my way down, putting the top onto the batting, and then follow suit with the opposite side of the table runner, then add the backing. And now really comes the fun part of quilting. Like I mentioned earlier, Cherry did a lot of different quilting techniques for this table runner. So first off, she's got some free motion little swirls around all of the bunny blocks and the phrase blocks, we'll call them, the lettering blocks. So you can see that with all that dense stitching, well, I shouldn't say dense, but with all of that stitching, it really makes that bunny face pop off of the surface if it wasn't popping off already with the addition of that plush fabric embroidery. But it really accents the machine embroidery design really, really well, and it's just beautifully done. She did this with our Sulky 60 weight poly light thread. It's a very lightweight thread, so it almost disappears into the fabric. So she chose like an off-white color for the poly light, but you could also choose a color that really blends in with that backing fabric so that it almost disappears and all you're left with is the texture of that quilting. So really, really beautiful. Then you can see along all of the piecing, all of those blocks that are pieced, or squares rather, she quilted using 12 weight cotton thread in our blendables variety. So it looks like she used a lot of different thread colors, but it was really just one thread spool. And the blendables changes color every 2.5 to 5 inches randomly across the thread length. So you get really cool colors, across your entire table runner, and no colors are really repeating, even if you're doing straight line quilting such as this. And with the 12 weight thread, you really need a larger needle, like even up to a size 100 needle, but a 90-14 sometimes works as well, and that's what Cherry used for this. You could also use a 30 weight thread, which is a little bit lighter than that 12 weight thread, and you might have greater success with that if you are quilting at high speeds. But in either case, you want to use a much lighter weight thread in the bobbin. Well, actually, I'll say in the case of the 12 weight thread, you'll want to use a 30 weight or even a 50 weight thread in the bobbin so that you get a nice balanced stitch out with that thicker thread. It's going to give you more of an almost hand quilted look to it. If you go to the 30 weight cotton blendables thread, you can use that same thread in the bobbin with great results. I would lengthen my stitch maybe to even a 3.5 for the 30 weight and 12 weight, and that gives you even more of a hand work look to it. You could also, of course, quilt this by hand. Lots of people are joining this big stitch quilting movement. I don't really know if it's a movement, but it's really trending. I saw a lot of big stitch quilting done at QuiltCon, and lots of people asking about hand quilting needles, and they kind of want to get into this meditative, slow quilting process, and kind of, takes them back to their roots. So yeah, I was seeing a lot of that. You could also quilt this using some of that beautiful rayon thread that's in your machine embroidery palette. Rayon thread's just going to give you a lustrous, shiny look to your quilting. You could stitch in the ditch using your construction thread, which was that 50 weight cotton. So there are just so many different ways of personalizing this and quilting it the way that you want the end result to look. So here's just a few more photos so you can see that free motion work around the machine embroidery, and then the straight line quilting, which looks really dynamic in this crisscross pattern that Cherry did with that heavier weight blendables thread that adds just another textural element and pop of color in a different way on the table runner. And then, as I mentioned, she did the same thing with the other embroideries, but you might remember that this panel was actually much larger. So she chose to free motion quilt just around the design and then add that straight line quilting along the rest of the length of that particular panel. So a really cool designer choice that she made for those panels to just kind of mimic that same quilting around all of the embroideries. There's the Hoppy Easter, very cute. And here is that finished table runner again, so you can see all of the beautiful quilting that's done, the adorable embroidery, and you can even alter this pattern, make a set of placemats using just that bunny, section or block, and then bind it, and you'll have a set of cute little placemats for your Easter table as well. All right, so I'm going to address some of the questions. Let's see. Oh, Dawn says Sashiko quilting is beautiful. Yes, and there's even a Sashiko machine that does that running stitch look for you, all done by machine. It's pretty amazing. Marianne says, straight line quilting I can do, freestyle, not so sure. Well, you could certainly do some echo quilting around your little bunny face motifs, or you can leave those areas free from quilting. With all of the other quilting on the table runner, it's going to be enough to keep all of those layers together. So that's just another choice. Plus, you have the additional soft and sheer extra behind those pieces that are making them nice and stable, so they won't puff up when you add the rest of your quilting to the table runner. All right. Marianne says, I love the 12-weight blendables, frequently use them in the loopers of my serger for decorative edges. Yes, that's a really great way to showcase those heavier weight threads. The 12-weight filane thread, which is our fuzzy acrylic thread, looks really pretty in the serger loopers as well, especially if you're working with a fabric like a wool or wool melton or even fleece. It just adds to that soft, fuzzy, furry kind of texture for those items as well. All right. Esther says, how did she tie off the 12-weight threads in the straight line quilting? It doesn't look like there is back stitching. That is a good question, and I'm actually not quite sure. And I assume that you are referring to the areas of stitching that are around those embroidered panels, because it just looks like that stitching disappears under those panels. She may have threaded a needle with the thread end, so you leave a long thread tail at the beginning of those stitches, and then you can thread a needle and pull that thread to the wrong side, and then you can either knot it and sink the knot between your quilted layers so it would be within the batting, or you can bring it to the wrong side and tie it off there. Just some ideas. I'm not quite sure what Cherry did, but that would be my assumption. All right. Anne Marie says, are the quilting stitches included in the pattern? The pattern tells you the type of quilting that Cherry did, and also the options that I mentioned here today, but there are not templates for the quilting, if that's what you're asking. All right. Lots of people are saying they're going to make one for Easter. They're going to make this and gift it to someone. Esther says after the embroidery, this should stitch together pretty quickly. Exactly. And Anne Marie says the strips are perfect. I was using tiny squares for too long. I know, it's so much easier to do it this way. Adding those sets of strips. All right, I might be all caught up. Thank you all for answering each other's questions as well. If you do have a question that I didn't address, I will be checking the comments after our live stream today, so hopefully I address them there. You can also always send us an email at info@sulky.com, and we will get back to you with the answers that you so deserve. But I am going to thank you all for joining me today, and I'm going to hop off so that I can head over to our education site, because in about 1 hour we will be going live with our freestanding lace tea lights live webcast with Sheila Ryan of Designs by Baby Moon. We're going to be learning how to make these adorable tea light covers. They fit a battery operated tea light perfectly. You just insert one into the bottom of your little egg-shaped lantern and turn it on, and it flickers and shines, and it's so cute for a little hanging lantern or an ornament or a centerpiece for your Easter table, perhaps in addition to your very cute bunny hop table runner pattern that you learned to make today. So lots of springy things on the horizon for today on this Tuesday's So What? And I hope that you will be joining in about an hour for our live stream over at sewingonline.sulky.com. So I'm going to go prepare for that, and I will see you all soon. Tune in next week for another So What, where we have some more quilty inspiration as we move our way through National Quilting Month. So thanks all for joining me today. I always appreciate that you spend your Tuesday afternoon chatting about all things sewing, and I look forward to seeing you in about an hour for freestanding tea lights. Have a great rest of